One, and I think we're live. Today I woke up a little late. Happens on Monday morning sometimes, so we're starting a little later than usual, and it'll be a 30-minute deal. Had a very nice, relaxing weekend, and today woke up after sleeping for a long number of hours. I slept like 12 hours last night. I just woke up, and I'm like, I feel like still waking up over here, but we're gonna do a quick one, 30 minutes. We're gonna talk about this idea of imposter syndrome, which seems to be something that almost every person who works as an engineer is gonna feel, I think, at some point, especially self-taught people, and especially like older people who might be coming from a second career. But I think that it's pretty prevalent, like, everywhere. So the idea of imposter syndrome is basically feeling like you don't deserve to be where you're at, feeling like you kind of like snuck in the door for your job or for your role, like you don't deserve it, and you're almost like, now that you're here, you're having to, like, on the daily try to hide what you don't know, and you feel like if people knew how bad you were as a programmer, or how much you didn't know, then maybe you'd get fired, and feeling like those kinds of feelings. They're really coming from this place of feeling like you don't deserve to be where you're at. My little tea here. This is gonna be running on this eventually. I think that it's something that it's really, I don't know if it's inevitable, but it seems like it. Almost every person that I know who started out has experienced this in some way. It's almost unavoidable. So I'll talk about my own experiences. So when I got my first job and I went out to Iowa, went to principal, I don't remember at first, like when I first walked in the door, feeling that like imposter syndrome kind of a thing. I remember seeing like what the other developers on my team were like, how good they were technically, and feeling like I was as good or better than them. So I didn't feel it at first, but I do remember feeling it in a whole lot of meetings. I remember being in a lot of meetings and feeling like I had no idea what the fuck was going on, and trying to like pretend that I knew what was going on, a lot of like deflection. That's really common for like imposter syndrome people. You'll like kind of deflect, and you'll hide the fact that you don't know anything. Honestly, people know, like if you try and hide your incompetence, it's going to be pretty obvious to everyone. So I don't know if that's a really good way to go about it. But I understand that it's almost like you feel like you have to, otherwise you'll get fired. I don't really remember feeling like that too much at my first job. But yeah, I definitely remember that I had certain meetings that I was in where I either said or did something that made me feel that way. But I never felt like I was going to get fired from my first job. I never really felt like I was underqualified for anything. Now, at my second job, I felt that way from almost the moment I walked in the door for the first year. So I was there, maybe the first 6 or 9 months. And I remember being like at that job at first and feeling like the development was so hard, especially at first. I didn't know what the fuck was going on for a long time. I was pretty open about it. If anybody asked, I would tell them, like, I don't really know how this shit actually works. Or like I would tell them, like, I don't feel too comfortable working in this thing yet. And that really like that wasn't my fault. I also was, and this is pretty common, or another like common reason of why you might feel imposter syndrome. I was comparing myself to other people, and I didn't realize that we weren't being judged on the same thing. So I'd compare myself to somebody else who might be a senior engineer when their responsibilities are very different than mine, and I might like think to myself that I'm not keeping up with them, but nobody's expecting. That's not what the expectation is. I remember asking my manager a bunch of times if I was about to get fired, and he'd be like, bro, what are you even talking about? Like, where is it even coming from? And there was somebody else I worked with who did the same thing, who was also like she was the other like junior person on the team. But yeah, I remember like that company was just very, very high level from an engineering standpoint. I remember like comparing myself to these people, most of whom had been like, writing code their whole life or for like 5, 10 plus years or something, and feeling like I couldn't match that, and therefore like, I was gonna lose my job and shit. But one of the things you have to remember with this shit is that it's so in your head. It's like very much so one of those internal battles. One of my favorite front end, or one of my favorite like resources for learning about how to code and shit is this dude named Kent C. Dodds, who's I'll try and like put this somewhere within like the YouTube description. I gotta like do stuff like that, but he is a really, really well-known name within the front-end community, specifically like the React community, for inventing patterns and championing and writing libraries that are very, very commonly used within that ecosystem. And he also talks about other stuff. He talks about imposter syndrome, and he's this guy who, like, by any account is a phenomenal engineer, like world class, has experienced this as well on a certain level. And I think he tweeted about it once, and he like suggested a book, and the book is really about, it's interesting because the book is about self-love and like silencing self-criticism kind of a thing. And that book is like, I can't remember the name of it. It's called like self-love, blah, 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 something like that. And the idea of the book is basically that, like, calm the fuck down. Like, not people aren't just looking at every little action that you do and criticizing you, and just like, stop. Like, that idea of being really self-critical is interesting because that's also really common. It's like high level of self-criticism, especially for people who are feeling imposter syndrome. I almost feel like it's like an act of contrition, whereby like if you punish yourself in front of people enough and you demonstrate that you're like inadequate, then maybe they'll like allow you to keep existing, kind of a thing. It's kind of a weird one, but I do think that that's an interesting solution and a really good one. I think if you're experiencing a whole lot of self-criticism or a whole lot of like feelings of imposter syndrome, a book like that's a really good idea. I think like that's where the origin of this stuff is coming from. You and it doesn't help like feel like if you're feeling imposter syndrome or you self-criticize a ton, none of those things are really going to help you get better, unless like you use your imposter syndrome somehow to like drive you to like go home and learn more. But I wouldn't even recommend doing that. Maybe a little bit, but I think more so you have to like come to grips with the idea that firstly your employer, like they probably know how good you are, and they know what they hired more than likely. It's very unlikely that you snuck in the door by accident. Like they probably gave you an interview, you passed the interview, they hired you, so always keep that in mind. The other thing is, I think that like, so my second job, I felt it a lot. At a certain point, it slipped away. Once I saw what I was getting paid relative to other people and what my actual title was, then I was like, oh shit, I'm comparing myself to people who are making like twice as much money as me. So maybe that's kind of silly. And then when I got my third job, now like I can't even fathom feeling it. Even if I went back to at any company, I can't fathom it. And I think that the reason why is because now at this point I've been able to get a job 3 times pretty easily each time. And I think that I've reached a point where I've convinced myself that like, even if I lose my job right now, I could very, very easily get another one. I think that's one of those things where I've just proved it to myself enough that I'm very confident I can get a new job. So now when I'm in, like, I am almost the opposite. Whatever the opposite of imposter syndrome is, I'm a imposter. Imposter syndrome is what I have now. I'm almost like too relaxed about stuff. And very much so, like, I don't know, I don't, just because I really do feel like at this point, if something catastrophic were to happen, I had to get a new job for some reason, I'm not really afraid of that. So I think it's something that'll go away in time too. And you just kind of have to accept it to some degree. I mean, it's super common. And there's a lot of other great videos and resources on here. I just kind of want to talk about it because I think it's because I have experienced it to some extent, and I think that when you do, it's a bitch when you do experience it. Like, it really sucks to go into work and to feel like you might lose your job every day because you don't know what you're doing, and there's like, that's a shitty feeling, especially if you're trying to hide it and stuff. I would say in general, if you're a software engineer, don't try to hide anything, because you're gonna get yourself in some fucking serious shit if you're constantly if you pretend to know more than you do, or if you're not asking for help when you need help, or if like you think that by asking questions it's going to reflect poorly on you, or if you reveal that you don't know something, it's going to reflect poorly on you. That's going to really stink. That's going to be problematic. Like, you're going to be in a meeting where someone's going to be describing requirements for something that you're going to be making, and if you're thinking that you can't ask questions because it reflects poorly on you, you're going to come out of that meeting with no idea what you're supposed to be making. And then what are you going to do? Like, you need to ask questions. Be like really, really candid about what you don't know. That's a really good tip, actually. I think that's a good tip for anyone. I think also that when you do that, there's people, be willing to be helped too. Like, especially when you're first starting out, asking for help is not a sign of weakness when you first start. It's not like, I mean, there's a limit that depends on what you're asking for sure. But generally speaking, like, it's a good idea to make friends and like ask for help, even if it's like just the person sitting next to you. You're like, hey, can I have this ticket here. Can we just like whiteboard this for a second, or can we just talk about this for a second? Almost every single time I've asked for help in that way, I've received help. I've never had somebody be like, dude, it's your job, dude. Like, I've never had that happen. I can't even imagine what that would look like, honestly, especially if you're new. So definitely be like, I would say that's a really good tip, is to be okay with asking for help. Reveal what you don't know. And hopefully you won't. Hopefully it won't be like too egregious that you'll lose your job and shit. But yeah, definitely be candid. Be candid about what you don't know. Ask lots of questions and shit when you get the chance. I mean, there's time and place for it too. If you're in a staff meeting of 25 other people, don't ask some dumb shit. Wait till the meeting's over and then ask one person or something. Or just sit next to some. Well, actually, you know what? Here's what was so helpful for me when I first started. I became really, really good friends with someone on our team who is project manager. And they were like a Scrum Master project manager. I became really, really good friends with him. He's an awesome guy. One of my favorite people I've ever worked with. And he was very, very generous. And because he was on the side, like in his personal life, building websites and like building web apps for his weird entrepreneurial pursuits, so it's able to help him with that stuff. And like it was almost like this exchange where I could help him with his shitty JavaScript questions, and in exchange for that, he would teach me how to like use Microsoft Outlook. That's actually really true. That's dead on what the relationship was, and he was so fucking helpful. He would help me do all the Scrum stuff. Like I'd be sitting there being like, dude, I don't know how to find these tickets. I don't know how any of this shit works. They're telling me this. They're telling me I have to put this thing in there. He was so helpful for all of this stuff. So I would say that's a good one. Make good friends. If you can make a friend like Paul, that's his name. If you make a friend like Paul, that's ideal. So he was helping me with all this, like when I didn't know what program management meant. I mentioned that in a video, or like Scrum or anything like that. We would sit down and talk about it like every day. I remember, he just having someone like that for the other shit. Not like I felt very confident in JavaScript for the most part. There was a whole lot of development when I first started out that I sucked at. Looking back now, I was pretty shitty, obviously. Like, I had just started out. I thought I was like competent, but not really. Like the other engineers there were a lot of engineers who were much, much better than me. Looking back now, I thought that I was the shit back then, but not really. But yeah, get yourself a Paul. That's really helpful. Get yourself somebody who can sort of take you through all those weird questions, all the like somebody you could just ask dumb shit to is really helpful. If you're struggling with code, then that's, you got to ask somebody else probably. But I don't know. For me, writing code has always been the easy part. Like, that's never the issue. The issue is always like, okay, you get a ticket, and like, man, my first job was crazy. You get tickets, and you're like, I don't even know what app this is supposed to be in. Like, I don't know where any of this shit is. And you have to like ask around until you find out where or what this app is, and and you're looking at like this ticket that's like pages long of shit, and it's just about like changing a word or something. There were so many tickets like that it was just so fucking weird. Like, it'd be like this expansive ticket, and then I'd be talking to like the person who, like, the product owner, they call them business analysts at this company, like the stakeholders who own the thing. I'd be asking them what the change is because I couldn't figure out. Like, oh, we're just trying to add we just want to add a couple words to this paragraph here. We just want to put this into a table instead of in a list of stuff. It'll be shit like that. And you're like, where the fuck? Like, the ticket doesn't even make any fucking sense. But all right, if that's what you guys want to do, that's cool. But then, yeah, I do remember feeling second job pretty much the day I started. Like, it was such a different world that I felt a whole lot of that impostery stuff. Like, right when I walked in the door, because like, I'd been making web apps, specifically front-end web apps that were like built with mock data and shit, and now we're going to their whole platform was on Docker. Even stuff like, it was a Mac. Like, I've been using Windows PCs my whole life, so they use Mac. So I was like, I flailed on the Mac for a while. I didn't know how to use like stuff like Docker. Like, what the fuck I don't know how to use Docker. There were all these the other thing that popped up all the time was like SSL certification, HTTPS stuff would pop, and like headers issues and stuff like that, debugging those popped up all the time. And that's like, man, that it was just a world that I didn't know anything about. What, like, it was just like, it almost felt like my first job again. Like, working at my second job felt like a first job to some extent. Now that I'm looking back, like, it took me so long to use. And again, it wasn't, some of their code was tough, but that was because I just didn't know how object-oriented JavaScript really worked, and I figured it out eventually, but it took me a minute. But the code wasn't too much of the problem. The other problem was that their product was so fucking complicated and scary, honestly. And the way so one of the things that always scared me about that company was the fact that they had support channels that would come and ask questions of the engineers for like the SDKs that we put out. Like, why doesn't this thing work this way? The documentation says to do it like this, but when I do it like this, it doesn't work. How do I do X, Y, and Z with your SDK, with your like library? So those questions used to come in all the time, and they get asked in like a public Slack channel with like 200 people in them, and there's only like a handful of us who are answering these questions. And for the thing that I worked on, there's only 2 of us. So if a question came in for like the thing that I worked on, I'd have to go answer it, but I'd be answering it in this like room of 200 people. So it's almost like there's 200 people watching you. So if you answer something wrong or fucked up, or it always felt like a test. It was really weird. Eventually I got over it, but at first I would try and be really careful about the stuff that I put out there, because like the CTO is in this room, the director of engineering is in this room, the founder of the company is in this room, and I'm, like I said, not too confident at the time with that job. I definitely had imposter syndrome, so I would always like look at the questions, and the questions came in the fucking like, who, like they did not always come in making 100% sense. They came in and needed like follow questions and all kinds of shit, or just like I'd be looking, I'd be like, what the fuck are you trying to say? I can't understand it, because there's like you're talking through a middleman the whole time. Like the support person at your team or at your company is like a middlemaning a conversation, and it's like shit's getting lost in between, and it's just very frustrating. But I remember those feeling like I was being tested anytime like an issue came up in support and being like, fucking here we go again. Eventually, yeah, the last few months there I stopped caring too much about it, and that, but it's interesting because when I was caring too much, I'd be like hesitant to ask questions, even because I thought that if I asked the wrong question it would show that I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about, kind of a thing. So I would even be worried about the questions I would ask. But then by the end of it, like I was like, okay, I guess I got confident enough that I knew that nobody else at the company could really answer this question except this other person, that I would be like, okay, let's like, I'll help you figure it out, but you're gonna have to really like, I'm gonna ask you a shitload of questions. Basically, I would just, if I didn't understand it, I would be very direct at the end about questions and not understanding stuff, as opposed to before when I was kind of dancing around it. But yeah, I definitely remember feeling imposter syndrome for that first year at my second job. I think yeah, it's inevitable. But then you kind of like go through the fire to some extent. Like if you're feeling imposter syndrome and it persists for like years and years and years and never goes away, that might be something. Maybe you just suck. I don't know. But generally speaking, if you're getting better and you want to get better and you're doing the best job you can and shit, you're fine. You don't have to worry too much about this stuff. And then the imposter syndrome shit will kind of go away on its own eventually as you just sort of work it out. But yeah, I think it's just part of the. If you're feeling it, like, I wouldn't worry too. You know, the first thing they say is don't worry about work. Like, if you're worried about something, stop worrying about it. If you can't stop worrying that you're worrying about it, kind of a thing. So that's what I would say. If you have imposter syndrome and you can't just magically tell yourself, like, hey, it's fine, no big deal, like, everyone goes through this, and then that fixes it. Obviously, that probably won't. What I would tell yourself is, like, you know, don't worry that you're worried. Like, this will go away. This is just like a phase in your career. And if you ask yourself, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? It's that you'll get fired. And if you got fired, here's the thing. If you've gotten a job before, you can always get another job. You can replicate success. You can replicate it. So I would never worry about, like, if you've gotten a job before, you know, if you're worried about getting fired, just remember that. You've done it before and you could always do it again. I'm sure it would suck and you know, maybe you take a pay cut and shit, but there's no reason why you can't replicate that result. So, you know, don't worry too much about it. That's what I would say. Other than that, we're going to be, got 5 more minutes. Talk about the stream for a second. I think that the stream goal for this week, I want to be that we're still very painfully working on the site. We moved the site. I've been doing this on like the live coding sessions, but we moved the site over from a vanilla JavaScript thing to React for a bunch of reasons. It's a Gatsby app, like a static site generated app. What I want to do is, I think I'm going to try and do it this week, because I want to put together a front end like learning roadmap and there's like examples of this, but I think that they're overdone. So I want to put together like a roadmap for somebody who wants to get involved, who wants to get a job as a front end developer. Like, where do you start? Where do you finish? When do you start applying? Like a roadmap, you know, like a roadmap. So I'll do that. The site is coming along, but it is going slow. Having to move everything over from vanilla to React is going to take a minute. We're still getting there. I think there's also some art that's going to be on there too, so watch out for that. There's going to be a very beautiful splash screen hero thing going on. And then, yeah, this week, let's see. This week at work is going to be pretty busy for me, I think. So that might cut into some of the stream time, but we'll see. I'll always try and get out here for like a half hour if I can. Today I just woke up late. I don't even have a good excuse. It's what it is. Yeah. Did get the tattoo this weekend, which was a lot of fun. I got a tattoo on Friday, which I'm really excited about. Let me tell you a little bit about that one. Bit of a stinger. Bit of a stinger, I'm not gonna lie. But I actually love how it came. That's probably my favorite tattoo, other than the right hand man, which is obviously number one. Ain't nothing gonna get better. I mean, how can you beat this? That's tough. That's a tough beat right there. And then I think on Wednesday I want to talk about what maybe I was going to talk about the tattoo, but I think I talked about it on my Facebook page. So now I'm not. Now I'm like I don't want to keep talking about it. So maybe we'll talk about something else. But yeah, it was fun to get. The artist was awesome. Really, really cool guy. He's a guy I've been following for a while. I hit him up on Wednesday or Thursday. I just asked him, and he said he had a cancellation on Friday. So I went in like the next day. Like told him at like 5:00 at night, 5:00 p.m. the day before what I wanted, and then was in the tattoo shop getting stenciled at like 10:30 a.m. the next day. It was so fucking fast, which is awesome. That's how I love to do these. I don't know if I could do like the well, I might for my next one, but I think that like the schedule an appointment, sit down, talk about it, and then multi-session tattoos. Oy, holy shit, that sounds rough. I saw a tattoo shop that I really like in Des Moines. I follow their Instagram, and they have like, I don't know what it is, but I think that they do. One of the tattoo artists there specifically does like long single session tattoos. And I see them, and I'm like, yo, that looks so brutal. Like, it'll be like a whole chest thing in like one session. That is brutal. I think I realized it with this tattoo. I forgot this, but this one really emphasized it. When you first start getting tattooed, like you sit down, the needle goes, it hurts, but it's very manageable at first. But over time, your skin gets very like more and more sensitive and shit, and your pain like it's a marathon, baby. Like by the second hour, like you are exhausted. And I forgot that, like, yeah, the fact that, and the other thing is, as it goes on, yeah, your skin gets like way more tender and like sensitive. So like, it hurts more by that second hour. It's just nasty, man. It was tough. This was like 3 or 4 hours, and it was fine at first. It was fine until it wasn't fine. I have some friends who have some pretty gnarly rib tattoos, and I was talking to them about this, and I don't know if I could even do that. That sounds like from the minute you sit down to the minute you stand up, you are like just dying. Like, this is moderate pain, but I think that the rib tattoo though, hell nah. I don't know, man. I don't know about that. But anyway, we're gonna sign off for today. And yeah, I do think I think I remember like the last couple weeks I keep coming in talking about how sad I am. I'm not sad anymore. I feel really good. But I do need to like get this stream together a bit more. I keep coming. I'm basically like, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in my personal my shit that I just need to like clean up my kitchen and shit. I just need to like get on top of some stuff in my life right now. So we're going to get on that. And then what I wanted to start doing is for these streams, just have a better idea what we're going to be talking about. Because now I've just been like rolling out of bed and just kind of and picking from a list of stuff some I want to talk about, just going on, which is fine, I guess. I guess it doesn't really have to be maybe it doesn't have to be anything more than this. I don't know. Yeah, maybe that is fine. It's tough because like there's the way that I do these, like in terms of how my brain handles it, I guess, is that like I just give myself string to tug on, and then sometimes like some of these topics I could start thinking about, and my brain could just go, and I could like in my head I could talk about it in like for so long, but that might be the night before, and then I wake up and I like lost the thread almost, and I can't remember like that all the ideas that I had, and then I'm also just not in that ranty sort of like mood. I think, yeah, we'll come back to it. I might prep more for some of these. I might not. I don't know. We're gonna see. I think the key thing for the stream is just to keep doing it, even if I'm late a little bit sometimes, or even if it's not like a perfect topic or anything. Like, I think it's really important just to keep doing it. So that's my one goal, honestly. Just keep streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then like the live coding sessions are just icing on the cake. But anyway, I'm out of here. I got to get some food and like do the rest of my life. Thanks for watching. I'll see you.